A true MotoGP racing machine with headlights, turn signals, mirrors, and a license plate holder. But the Honda RC213 VS, choked down to a pitiful 99 horsepower, elicited nothing but laughter. Fans waited for this model for many years, envisioning it as a replacement for the outdated CBR 1000R, and they were seriously disappointed by the company's inexplicable actions. No one could have imagined that the long-awaited Honda RC213 VS was merely part of a brilliant marketing strategy by the Japanese giant, which was actually looking much deeper. After the fanfare surrounding the initial announcement, the Honda RC213 VS street bike received rather mixed reviews, as headlines proclaiming it to be the latest and greatest. The fastest motorcycle in MotoGP history for public roads were quickly overshadowed. Most of the news following the initial press reaction focused on the unexpectedly low power and the extremely inflated price, even considering that it is such an exclusive and exotic thing. One of the reasons for the failure was that the Honda RC213 VS was one of the most anticipated motorcycles among MotoGP fans, bike enthusiasts, and Honda loyalists for many years. Rumors about the possibility of releasing a Honda MotoGP motorcycle for the street have circulated among V4 fans since the legendary sport touring VFR 800 was replaced in 2009 with something that was not fully understood. Fans are still waiting for a sporty liter V4 from the Japanese, but let's go back a bit. Rumor mill began to gain momentum when several Japanese magazines started showing images of what such a bike would look like. Eventually, Honda confirmed that a prototype is in development. And at the end of 2014 in EICMA, we finally saw the bike in the flesh. The model was presented, and everyone already knew most of the details, except for one important piece of information that was of great significance: the price. This price was announced at $184,000, 10 times more expensive than their then flagship 1000RR. Although the motorcycle seemed to be everything Honda fans had hoped for, the high price disappointed those who were hoping to become the owners of the next leader in the heated war of leader bikes at that time.
Gaslighter.
Honda was left scratching their heads, wondering why their fans were so disappointed when they had just unveiled Marc Marquez's bike with headlights, turn signals, and a license plate holder. As noted by their public relations department, this is the first time that Honda has offered its factory-level racing weapon to the market. Honda has never before released purebred racing motorcycles to the market, and the reason is that their position has always been that Honda does not sell its secrets. Only one mechanic from the MotoGP team was allowed to take a peek inside the magical seamless transmission that propelled Marc Marquez to the top of the podium. By the way, the road version is equipped with a standard manual transmission. The Honda HRC division was known for some quite significant limited production homologations, ranging from the CB1100R to the iconic RC30 and RC45. But until now, it has always used street motorcycles as a basis for transforming them into racing bikes, rather than the other way around. By creating the Honda RC213 VS, they have turned this model upside down and will sell their best racing machine directly to the public. Only part of its potential will be limited and will be available for an additional $12,000, provided that you promise to use it only on the track. Thus, the version imported, for example, to the United States will have a power output of only 99 horsepower. The reason for this is somewhat interesting, as it gives us insight into how Honda thinks as a company. Honda claims that this is due to the decibel restrictions on street-legal vehicles and the limited space available for accommodating adequately sized mufflers. The factory-installed exhaust system is simply not physically capable of meeting the requirements of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Therefore, they simply limited the redline to a ridiculous 9,400 RPM. In other markets, with more lenient regulations, this figure will only be reduced by a few thousand RPM, hence the figure of 160 horsepower. The sports version increased the output to 215 horsepower in both cases, which, considering the dry weight of the motorcycle at 160 kilograms, is quite a good figure. But again, let's return to the definition itself. A MotoGP replica for modifications. Is it some kind of replica or a real MotoGP race bike for the street if the racing RC213V has 256 horsepower instead of 215? Accordingly, the pneumatic valve timing system, which Honda had been developing since 2005, was removed. Combining the price and these power figures, it seems impossible not to be angry at Honda for such a thrilling trick, but there may be a method to this madness. Honda has often acted prudently, employing methods that were not immediately understood, but ultimately strengthened their position in the history of motorcycles. The purpose of this particular machine is not to sell it to those who are only concerned with power and price. The essence of this motorcycle is that it is a special amalgamation. It is not a street motorcycle. It was never intended to fulfill this duty. It is simply a necessity for the role that this motorcycle is meant to perform. This role may have been to occupy the informational podiums ahead of the debut of the V4 series models from the company. Just like it was with the H2R, after which there was a boom of turbocharged models at Kawasaki. But as we see today, something in Honda's plans has changed after all. Otherwise, it's just a question, why? But there is an answer. If you want to win all sorts of racing titles, you would do so by equipping the best teams in each series with your MotoGP bike, which wins championships. Such a price for the bike was set to deter collectors. $200,000 for a low-powered exhibit for the corner of your living room is ridiculous for everyone except barons like Lord Hesketh. $200,000 seems utterly absurd for the average consumer. Nevertheless, $200,000 for a world-class racing team is not too much for a theoretically race-ready machine that could win right out of the box. They overvalued it with the right intention. In the case of people who have more money than common sense, they took all the titles of the most powerful, best motorcycle in MotoGP history for a road that typically has such a bike. They tried to make it unappealing in order to attract as many people as possible who would actually profit from their investments by placing them on the podiums around the world. Honda is huge. They have a lot of money to develop what they want, and they remain very conservative, usually being the last to bring their new ideas to market. They act like sleeping giants, possessing the power to bring most ideas to life, but they cannot do so without extreme necessity. This method is described as a very Japanese method, and all 4 Asian brands demonstrate similar strategies. Over the past 50 years, typically about once a decade, it has successfully created artificial hype around its products and shown the world that even if it doesn't make them, it still has the ability to develop something that goes beyond common understanding. When Honda first arrived on the Isle of Man, they developed a 4-stroke, inline 4-cylinder racing motorcycle and then showcased it on the mountain course, astonishing everyone. In the late 1980s, after resolving the issues that arose during the development of their V4 architecture, they did the same with the RC30 and RC45. At the very least, the CNR 750, with its oval pistons, is worth mentioning. They were all racing models and unimaginably expensive for that time. This is what they have done again with the RC213 VS, according to their logic. But attempts to use this wild machine in street racing can be counted on one hand. New Zealander Bruce Anstey is one of the few who tried to challenge the RC213 VS against the modified superbikes from BMW, Kawasaki, and others. Anstey showed rather average results at the Isle of Man in 2016 and 2017, finishing no higher than 5th place. However, in the same year of 2017, he wrote a victory in the history of the Ulster Grand Prix. The well-known 8-time Macau race winner took on a new challenge in 2018 with the Honda RC213 VS, and although he was the fastest in the free practice sessions, he had to follow in 2nd place behind Hickman. In the end, Rudder was left only disappointed with his results. It seems this time it didn't work out. Honda's brilliant plan failed, just like the motorcycle itself. Unwanted by collectors, consumers, and racers, it turned out to be unnecessary for anyone. Against this backdrop, it would have been more successful to take 3H2R, a pair of 2-stroke monsters Ronax 500. Such messages could be found on the forums. And yet, there is one record to the credit of the 213 VS. The Honda RC213 VS has become the most expensive motorcycle in the history of Japanese auctions. The auction house Bingo and the largest Japanese online trading platform, Yahoo Auctions, conducted a joint sale of a 2016 Honda RC213 VS motorcycle for a record-breaking $237,000, surpassing the previous world record record held by a 1968 Honda CB750, which was sold at auction by the British auction house H&H for $221,600 3 years ago. According to experts, this is yet another auction record, a harbinger of rising prices for all collectible Japanese motorcycles. The RC213DS has remained a disappointment for fans who were waiting for this motorcycle as a sort of four-cylinder version of the 1000RR. However, it had a slightly different purpose, more global, noble, which, unfortunately, was understood by only a few. But a giant like Honda will achieve its goals sooner or later, and it can be confidently said that this is not the end of the story.